My name is Mahnaz Cavalluzzi. I'm one of the partners at Cerini and Associates, and today I'll be walking through several important changes issued by the Office of Management and Budget, or OMB, that affect federal financial assistance recipients and subrecipients of federal awards and organizations subject to single audit requirements. The goal of this session is not to cover every technical change in the uniform guidance, but rather to highlight the key updates that are most likely to impact nonprofit organizations, grant recipients, and audit planning. On April 22nd, 2024, OMB issued updated guidance in the Federal Register titled OMB Guidance for Federal Financial Assistance. These updates revise Part 200 of the Uniform Guidance, which includes the administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards. The revised guidance is effective for awards issued on or after October 1st, 2024. That effective date is important because organizations will need to pay close attention to the terms and conditions of each award to determine which version of the uniform guidance applies. From an audit and compliance perspective, this means entities should begin reviewing their federal award portfolio, updating internal policies where needed, and making sure staff responsible for grant compliance understand the new thresholds and terminology. OMB made these revisions for several reasons. First, the updates are intended to incorporate statutory requirements and administrative properties related to federal financial assistance. In other words, the guidance is being refreshed to better align with current federal expectations and priorities. Second, OMB is seeking to reduce administrative burden on both federal agencies and recipients. This is an important theme throughout the revisions, making the guidance easier to apply while still maintaining accountability over federal funds. Third, OMB wanted to clarify sections of the prior guidance that had been interpreted differently in practice. For organizations managing grants, these clarifications should help promote more consistent application. Finally, OMB also emphasized plain language. The revisions are intended to reduce complexity, improve accessibility, and address inconsistent terminology. OMB also issued Implementation Memorandum M2411, which describes the improvements made for recipients of federal funds. So, from a practical standpoint, organizations should not only look at what changed, but also use this as an opportunity to revisit their grant policies, procedures, and internal controls. Now, let's walk through the key changes. One of the most significant updates is that the single audit threshold increased from $750,000 to $1 million. This means that only entities that expend $1 million or more in federal awards during a fiscal year will be subject to a single audit. That change may reduce the number of organizations required to have a single audit, but it does not eliminate the need for strong grant compliance. Even organizations below the single audit threshold are still responsible for complying with the terms and conditions of their federal awards. Another important change is the increase in the indirect cost de minimis rate from 10% to 15%. Recipients and subrecipients that do not have a current negotiated federal indirect cost rate may elect to charge a de minimis rate of up to 15% of modified total direct costs. This change may allow organizations to recover a more realistic portion of their administrative and overhead costs. However, organizations should still evaluate whether using the de minimis rate is appropriate, ensure the rate is applied consistently, and maintain support for the modified total direct cost base. The amount of subaward costs counted within the modified total direct cost base also increased from $25,000 to $50,000 over the lifetime of the award, not annually. This is an important detail for organizations that pass federal funds through to subrecipients. The equipment capitalization threshold increased from $5,000 to $10,000. As a result, amounts under $10,000 may generally be expensed and charged to the federal award instead of being capitalized, assuming the organization's own capitalization policy supports that treatment. There was also a similar increase in the threshold for unused supplies from $5,000 to $10,000. Title to supplies vests with the non-federal entity, but if unused supplies exceed $10,000 upon completion of the program and are not needed for another federal award, they may be sold or retained for other uses, with the entity compensating the federal government for its share of the value. The big takeaway from these changes is that organizations should update their policies, especially around single audit applicability, indirect costs, subawards, equipment, supplies, and documentation. To wrap up, the uniform guidance revisions create both opportunities and responsibilities. The increased single audit threshold may reduce audit requirements for some entities, and the higher de minimis indirect cost rate may help organizations recover more of their administrative costs. At the same time, these changes require careful review of award terms, internal policies, and compliance procedures. Organizations should consider taking a few practical steps now. Identify which awards are subject to the revised guidance, update relevant policies and procedures, communicate changes to program and finance staff, and maintain clear documentation to support compliance decisions. Have any questions or would like additional guidance, you can contact us at info@cerinicpa.com or visit cerinicpa.com.